Welcome, and thank you for your interest in the overview of performing a search in Matrix. I'm Marilyn Maxwell, and I'll be your presenter. In this session, we'll cover an overview of the quick search, the classic search, map search, and the speed bar search. In Matrix, simply hover on the search menu and then the property type that is of interest to you. You'll notice there's a quick and a classic option off to the side of each. There's no wrong answer when it comes to choosing which one. It simply matters which works best for you and which contains the fields that you need the most. Looking at the classic single family first, on the right column, for instance, the price, beds, baths, square footage, private pool, number of stories. Most of the characteristics of the shape and size of home are in that far right-hand column. Geography is about in the center of the screen. And then other additional characteristics and the status are found in the left column. If you have an MLS number or numbers, you can use the search box there to search. In the criteria section, you must separate numbers with commas. A little alliteration for you, criteria, commas. In the speed bar, which we'll talk about a bit later, you need to have spaces. So speed bar is spaces, criteria, commas between your MLS numbers. Switching to quick, instead of being down the far right column, most of the property information is housed in the little box in the upper right. So it's just a bit more condensed version of the same fields, many of the same fields that were on the classic search. There are a few other things on here that aren't on the classic and vice versa. That MLS number search, for instance, that field is not in the quick search. It is in the classic search. In the quick, you have this school search, which is not an option in the classic. So again, each serve their own purpose, and they may be full of fields that you use an awful lot or not so often. So you just simply choose which format works best for you for the search that you're doing in that moment. To perform a search, begin with the status. It will default to active. You can, of course, click and select any other statuses that you would like. For prices, typically you're going to do a range. If you hover in that space, it will give you this little pop-up, which is explaining the plus, the minus, and the dash between two numbers. In this case, 350,000 to 450,000 is what I'm searching in. So it's 350-450 because the thousands place is already presumed. I only need to type the first three digits of that price. If I were to type just the 350 minus, I'm telling the system 350,000 or less, so down to 0. Conversely, if I make it a plus, I'm telling it 350,000 and up to as high as it could possibly go. If I were to only type the number without a plus or minus or dash between two numbers, then I'm limiting it to exactly $350,000. In this case, that may be what you want. It may be too confining and limiting. So again, use what's best for the particular search that you're doing for that particular consumer. Anywhere you're freeform typing numbers, you're going to use that convention. So in this case, 3+ bedrooms, 3 or more bedrooms. If you do 2-4, I'm looking for 2 to 4, between 2 and 4 full bathrooms. Moving down into text fields like subdivision, for instance, if I were to type 2 words, maybe it would recognize those, maybe it would not. Maybe the subdivision is 2 different words, maybe it's 1 word, maybe it's hyphenated. Street names and subdivisions sometimes aren't exactly what we call them. They're named something different and it's just kind of evolved into a colloquialism or a nickname. So we have to write it a little differently than we might say it. Street name, for instance, if you don't know if Briar Forest is 1 word or 2, you can put the asterisk in between. So now I'm telling the system anything that starts with Briar and ends with Forest. If I put another asterisk after the end of Forest, I'm telling it anything that begins with Briar, then has the word Forest, and it could have anything else after it. So Briar Forest Lane, Briar Forest Trails, Briar Forest Avenue, briar forest, anything could come after the asterisk. And again, because I limited it, I'm getting 0 results. If I change that price to a range, then I'm getting at least 1 result. Again, wherever you're freeform typing, you can use the as asterisks. And the asterisk can go at the beginning, the middle, or the end. So in this case, I'm telling the system anything that contains the word forest in the street name. The asterisk again is saying it could begin with anything and end with anything, but somewhere in there is the word forest. And if you'll notice, I have over 60 matches now with that typing. So again, same principle in subdivision where you're freeform typing. Anywhere you have these icons that look kind of like a stacked piece of paper, those are multi-choice lists. And you'll get a little pop-up and a list to choose from. Those are not necessarily freeform typing fields. You do have to select from that list. If you know the name of it, you can just start typing and then select it from the list. But you can't just only type what you want in those fields if it has that symbol. So that's the quick. Again, looking at the classic search, very similar. Again, I have the MLS numbers options. In both, I have the select all statuses and select none statuses. If you run a search without selecting any status, it can be a very open-ended search, which could result in way too many properties. But if you're looking for a particular address, let's say the consumer called you and is having difficulty finding information on the specific address, perhaps it was active last week, but now it's in pending, or maybe it's withdrawn temporarily. You just don't know. So if you remove all of the statuses and search for that street address, then you'll probably end up finding property information much more efficiently than continuing to guess at when it may have closed or what date range it closed within, or if it's in this pending or that pending, or that type of thing. At the bottom of any search that you perform, whether it's quick or classic, you do have the option to add additional fields. I've already added some, so my menu says add remove. But again, you might have the option to just add if you hadn't added any yet. The idea here is to add fields that you might be missing or need to search by, but aren't readily available as defaults. I mentioned earlier that the schools search is a part of the quick search by default, but it's not on the classic search. So here, I've just simply added those fields to enable me to search by school name. Public remarks and realtor remarks are searchable fields that are by default on the quick search, but not here on the classic. So again, I went ahead and added those in. And then you can see other options, whether it's a part of a mandatory HOA, if it's a vacation rental, yes or no. Again, if you just simply click on add or add remove, on the left are all of the potential fields that you could add to that screen and search by. And then on the right are the things that you have already added. Once you add any field, it just lives at the bottom of that one particular search. So right now I am in the single family classic search. That's the only place I've added those fields to. They are not on my single family quick, for instance. They're not in my townhome quick or classic, for instance. It's only in the single family classic. So it can take a few moments to go through each search and add those fields additionally. But once you add them, they just stay there and they're searchable and available for you however long you need them. You can also, of course, go back into add remove and take it out. So if you don't want that field on the screen, you can just simply remove it instead of adding it as you would have done in the previous screen. And last but not least is the shortcut bar or the speed bar. So I'm going to just quickly run a search and get results. Just so I can show you what I call kind of a breadcrumb trail that it makes. So res space act space 350-450 space Tomball Southwest. If I were to manually have typed all that in there, I would get this set of results with 27 total results. If you click the little question mark to the left of that field, it will open the help menu for that speed bar. It's not hard per se, but you do need to know the abbreviations and you need to put them in the proper order for the speed bar to work. So looking at the screen now, the little pop-up help menu, again, you can use MLS numbers. Just be sure that they are separated by spaces in the speed bar. And then status, act, space, closed, res, condo, land, multifamily. Again, just depending on what kind of property it is, you'd have to do the status first, then the property type. You can use it to search for addresses. You just need street number and name only. Leave off drive, court, street, lane, avenue, circle, city, zip, state, all of those things. So just 1, 2, 3, 4, and then main, and that's it to search by address. Again, you can search by an awful lot of information. You just have to put it in the exact correct order, spaced properly with all the correct numbers and symbols in the right order. So again, it just takes a little getting used to, but you certainly can do that fairly easily. Back at the results screen, let's say this is a search I'm going to run very frequently. And I don't always want to have to write out res act 350 to 450 Tomball Southwest. I just want to save it. If you go down to the bottom to the save option, you can choose to save a new speed bar shortcut. And I can do the / that's already there, needs to remain. And then I can do kind of whatever I might need to. No spaces, no symbols. So Tomball Southwest 350 to 450 might be the shortcut that I would write out. Again, no spaces, no symbols, just text. And then click on save. So now every time I come into the system, instead of typing out res space act space this, that, the other, I can just simply do / Tomball Southwest. So that's, in a nutshell, an overview of the quick, the classic, and the speed bar. The last piece to cover is searching by map. It doesn't matter, again, if you are in a quick or a classic, you always have the map search option. Just click on the map tab in the upper right. Across the top center of the tab are all your drawing tools. So draw a radius, a rectangle or square, a polygon, a freehand polygon, or erase all the shapes that you have drawn. You can see I've got some listings kind of spread out here. Let's say for whatever reason they had told me they wanted to live in this little portion only, not this far east. If I take my polygon, click it once to pick up that tool, and the tool turns yellow so I can tell it's in use. Click and let go every time you want to change direction. So I can simply follow along this roadway and the curve it's making down and around. Again, just clicking and letting go every time I want to make a turn. And then you just meet back up with the first point to end it and click or double click, and it will close up the shape and make those two end points meet up for you. And now it's eliminated the option for those other properties that were out here to the east of the shape I've now drawn. If you hover on the big red dot for each shape, you have the option to delete the shape. You also have the choice to exclude the shape. So just for example's sake, let's pretend like they did not want to live in this little section for whatever reason. Those other listings were the ones that would have been more desirable to them because they did want something further east, closer to Highway 249. If I exclude this shape, you can see it eliminates everything that was inside and brings back the other two that are outside the shape. So you can have any combination of shapes, up to 25 different shapes. So you can have multiple polygons, a polygon, a rectangle, a circle, a freehand polygon. The freehand polygon is just one fluid motion. So it gives you, again, same ability to trace the roadways, but it's a little easier to get jostled around when the map moves in things. So I feel like I have a little bit more control over the regular polygon. And lastly, the circle. If you click and hold and drag your mouse button out, you can draw a radius or a circle and look for property within whatever distance of the center point. My shapes didn't really overlap all that much, but you can have shapes that do completely overlap. Maybe you have something like one buyer is interested in right here, and one buyer is interested in right here. We've got to find something in the middle, right? So if we did a radius from the center out, only these few that fall in the middle might be center ground for that particular. Again, several different ways that you can use it. Clicking the eraser icon at the top, again, erases all your shapes. The layers allow you to see different layers, guides, helpful different boundaries. So if it's in red, you have to zoom in as it's telling you. So I'm zoomed out far enough that I can use all these different layers. If I click zip code, for instance, it's going to overlay little blue lines and tell me what the zip code is within those boundary lines. So that's a really good reference for finding out what zip code is where, if you wanted to search by zip code instead of searching by geo market area or something like that, but you just want to double check that your zip code is correct, then this layer can help you determine that. Again, you have quite a few options. There's city limits, county limits, unified school district, which is just simply school districts. The flood zones, it's a FEMA classification of risk map. There is no map that exists of will it flood or won't it flood. It's only your level of risk according to FEMA. Orange being out of special flood hazards or the lowest level of risk. Purple, 100-year floodway, floodplains, and the blue colors, 100-year floodway and floodplain, but coastal. Those are going to be highest level of risk. You're required to carry insurance if the property falls within one of those 100-year floodway or floodplains. You're not required to carry insurance in the other categories. But again, that doesn't mean you shouldn't get some, because it may still flood depending on a storm event that we might have or other weather-related events. Last few items on that layers is Geo Markets and MLS area numbers. The Geo Markets is what I would recommend that you use. They're called kind of commonsensical parts of town. So this one is up in Tomball. Again, you've got Medical Center, you have Katy East, Katy North, a little further north, you have New Waverly. Our MLS coverage area is quite large. Let me zoom way out on this map just so you can kind of get an idea of the scope of the MLS coverage area. We go as far south as almost Sargent, Texas, as far east as Beaumont, as far west as almost Brenham, and then as far north as almost Sealy. So a very, very, very large coverage area. You're never going to know probably all of those names, all of the parts of town. So this being called something that's relatively commonsensical can really help streamline the search. I don't know that anyone walks around calling this part of town Katy Southeast, but it certainly does make finding property easier when I know where that is, where those boundaries fall, and that it's the one on the east of 99 and south of I-10 as opposed to the one that's west of 99 and south of I-10. Again, it's a good reminder for you just to be able to look at the map and see the layers to know where those boundaries end. And then the last few things, again, Geo Market areas is what that one just was. If I zoom in a little further on the map, I can get to use the Geo Elementary, Middle, and High School. This is the elementary school boundaries, middle school boundaries, and high school boundaries. Again, you're not searching by this, but it's telling you what school that particular area is currently zoned to. So here are all my properties, my results. If I zoom in just a little bit, you can see the name of the elementary school that they're zoned to. If I click middle school, there's a little green line showing the outline and the school it's zoned to. And same thing with high school. And yes, you can turn on multiple layers at once. It can just get a little hairy trying to tell which one's what and where the blue line turns into a green line. Is it starting and stopping here or there? So that can get a little bit distracting. And there is a layer for the MUDs. It actually includes all of the utility districts, so MUDs and PIDs and LIDs and all of those. The little brown lines represent the MUD. Most MUDs are going to be outside the Houston city limits. All of them are actually. And if you zoom out enough, you're seeing the brown boundary lines. If you zoom in a little bit further, eventually you'll see the name of the MUD on the map as well. While it's not giving you the values that you need to fill out the form, it's at least letting you know that that property did fall in a MUD and what that MUD might be called. In my case, all of my results are outside the boundaries of the MUDs, so that wouldn't be relevant. Historical districts, again, school districts versus unified school district, they're going to be about the same in data results. And that brings us to the end of the overview of searching for property in Matrix. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out by email or phone call. Thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoyed this tutorial.